Hey, welcome into a special episode of the Big Ten Huddle. I am your host for this episode, Zach Guggenheim. And what if, I just want to pose this question, what if your superpower was making sure your team never got in trouble? What if that was your superpower to make sure that you never, ever were threatened? That is my Heisman case for Julian Sayin. That's my Heisman case for Julian Sayin, and the media has lost its mind. Again, this is the Big Ten Huddle. I'm Zach Guggenheim. We're going to be talking about why the media has gone insane in the whole discourse that is Julian Sayin's Heisman candidacy. So a lot of this started, and I just want to preface this by saying, obviously, Julian Sayin has work to do. So before anyone kind of comments in the first minute of this video and says, well, Julian Sayin hasn't beaten Michigan again. Julian Sayin hasn't beaten Michigan yet. He has not won the Big Ten championship yet. Granted, that is true. And if he does not do those things, he absolutely will not be in the Heisman conversation. So let's just get that out of the way. Julian Sayin will not be the Heisman winner. He will not make it to New York if he does not beat Michigan and if he does not beat Indiana. He might get to New York if he gets to the Big Ten title game, but he will not win the award. Obviously, it will go to Fernando Mendoza. I think I'll be blatantly obvious or blatantly honest about this. I do think it will end up being between Fernando Mendoza and Julian Sayin or Jeremiah Smith. I think ultimately one of those three is going to win it, barring some craziness. Like if Ohio State loses to Michigan and then Indiana loses to Oregon in the Big Ten title game. I think that's maybe the kind of the secret sauce for how neither Mendoza or Sayin or Smith don't win the Heisman. But I think it's between those three guys. But the narrative around Sayin in particular has just been stupid. And I mean blatantly stupid. And I know some of you know I'm an Ohio State fan. I'm trying to take my Ohio State glasses off for this. But I just want to talk about how Julian Sayin is being judged versus the rest of the field. So I want to go back. George Reister, who's a guy on Twitter, he has his own show. He put this out, and this is fueling the narrative against Julian Sayin. Ohio State has the exact same record, 9-0. This was a couple weeks ago. If you switch Julian Sayin out for any of these quarterbacks, here's the quarterbacks that he lists: Mendoza, Mensa, Moore, Fagnano, Mestamaker, Simpson, Pavia, King, Carr, Maava, JKS from Cal, LOL, Fafita, Robertson, Sorsby, Green, Stockton. First of all, that's 16. Well, yeah, it's 16 quarterbacks. 16 quarterbacks that he said that would have the exact same record, 9-0, if you switch Julian Sayin out for any of those other quarterbacks. Now, mind you, at this point, Ohio State had not played UCLA or Rutgers. They played Penn State, who has turned it around. They played at Washington, who nobody has beaten Washington at their place in the past couple years, except Ohio State. They played at Illinois, who's a decent team. They played Texas at home, who's beaten some pretty good teams. I'm sorry. I flat out disagree. I flat out disagree that all of those quarterbacks would be 9-0. Mendoza struggled against Penn State. They needed a toe tap of toe taps to win at Penn State. Now, I know Ohio State played Penn State at home, but the proof is in the pudding that Penn State is a difficult out right now, and Ohio State made them look like nothing. Texas is a tough out, and they beat Texas at home. And so if you're saying that any of those quarterbacks with Ohio State's roster, I get it, would be a 9-0. I think you are trivializing what Julian Sayin is to this Ohio State team. And this is my argument. The reason why Julian Sayin is so important is he never puts his team in a bad situation. Go back to the Texas game. Everybody will look at the stat line. Everybody will say, well, he only threw for 120 yards. Yeah, but did you see the difficulty of throws? Did you see him in his own end zone throwing on third down? Like making sure he gets the ball to Carnell Tate and making sure it's not a pick with pressure in his face. Did you see him thread the needle again in his own red zone and inside his own 10-yard line or 15-yard line to Max Clare? Right? That could have been really bad. And by the way, he came back from drops, threw a ball to Max Clare on the sideline, drop. Threw a couple balls that would have been, one of them would have been a big play to Jeremiah Smith, drop. Julian Sayin did not put his team in bad situations against the number one preseason team. Now, I get they're not number one anymore, but to be in that spot as a true freshman and to never put his team in a bad situation, that's high-level football. That should be commended. That should be commended. I'm sorry. I think most of the quarterbacks that you have in that list probably make some poor choices and they lose that game. CJ Carr, he made some bad choices against Miami, made some bad choices against Texas A&M. Now, CJ Carr's been very, very good. I'm not trying to go against CJ Carr, but he's made some mistakes. Maava, he's hot and cold, man. He is dynamite. But also, he has moments where you're like, why did you throw that one? Sorsby, LOL. My goodness. Mensa, LOL. I mean, just stupid stuff. And then, so I don't know if he started the conversation, but that was one of the things. But the one that really got me heated, Zach Barnett from Football Scoop, he doubled down. He put out an article, and the article started by saying, I haven't watched Ohio State much. Okay. Heisman argument aside, dude, if you're going to admit that, just stop writing about it. You don't get to speak. Do your job. If you're going to write about something, make sure you actually watch the darn game, watch the film, watch the player. But you didn't. So you just made assumptions. But here's the thing. He makes the argument that because they have a weak schedule, and because his team is a juggernaut, Julian Sayin should not win the Heisman. Okay. So let's look at some of the other Heisman candidates. So Fernando Mendoza, who I think is the Heisman favorite currently. I love Fernando Mendoza. What I'm about to do is not meant to make Indiana fans mad. It's just to put things in perspective. Fernando Mendoza played Old Dominion, Kennesaw State, Indiana State. Crap teams, right? Plays Illinois, crushes Illinois, right? Fernando Mendoza didn't need to show up for that game. I mean, they just throttled Illinois. At Iowa, Mendoza had a Heisman moment. He also kind of put his team behind the 8 ball, right? Threw a pick. Against Oregon, played very well. Did throw a pick 6 that tied the game up. Now, to Mendoza's credit, led his team right back down the field. But then Michigan State, UCLA, at Maryland, at Penn State versus Wisconsin. And, at Maryland, they crushed Maryland, but 1 touchdown, 1 pick. At Penn State, where they almost lost, they're inches away from losing that game. 19 of 30, 218 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 pick. And again, he was kind of the reason why they almost lost. Now, he's also the reason why they won. But again, what if you never had to be there in the first place? Julian Sayin against Penn State was 20 of 23, 316 yards, and 4 touchdowns. And when they were threatened, which by the way wasn't his fault, his third or fourth string running back fumbled, which led to a 17-14 halftime lead. What does Julian Sayin do? Touchdown, touchdown, touchdown. Game over. Now, we can talk all we want about Carnell Tate and Jeremiah Smith. He's got studs. Fernando Mendoza does too. I get that Smith and Tate might be the two best receivers in college football, but like as soon as it was a 3-point margin, Sayin just responded. Deep pass, touchdown, 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 game. I get that that's not a Heisman moment, but if what Mendoza did was a Heisman moment, then I think what Sayin did is a Heisman moment. It just didn't feel dramatic, right? Which has been another criticism. He has no dramatic moments. You want to know why? Because when he feels drama, he scores touchdowns. Maybe we should care about that. Just maybe. Okay? So that's Mendoza, who I think is the strongest in the field. Now let's go to the SEC golden boy right now, Marcel Reed, who has had moments of brilliance. Again, I would not have a problem if Marcel Reed won the Heisman. I wouldn't. He's got great stats. 77 carries for 395 yards, 6 touchdowns. He is 189 of 306, 2,752 yards, 25 touchdowns to 8 picks. He has a 61.8% completion percentage. So not as accurate, clearly not as accurate, but it has some mobility, has been very good. But if we're going to talk about schedule, let's talk about schedule, okay? Against Notre Dame, who they won by the skin of their teeth and by the refs keeping the cloth in their pockets. All right, let's just be real. They should have lost to Notre Dame. He was 17 of 37, 360 yards, 2 touchdowns and a pick. So he completed 46% of his passes. He was dynamic in that game, but like he wasn't efficient. Okay, that's like his big game. Everything else, this is his schedule. Versus Auburn, they stink. By the way, they only won by 6. Against Mississippi State, they stink. 13 of 23 for 180 yards. Versus Florida, they stink. 234 yards, one touchdown, 1 pick. Against Arkansas, where he had to be brilliant because Arkansas threatened them, despite the fact that they stink. 23 of 32, 280 yards, 3 touchdowns. Good. Great. That's like one of his best performances against a 5-6 or 6-5 team. Awesome. Against Missouri without Bo Pribula, 20 of 29, 221 yards, 2 touchdowns. They never were threatened. And then here was his Heisman moment. 22 of 39, 439 yards, 3 touchdowns, 2 picks to 4-7 South Carolina. And on the surface, you're like, well, yeah, like he got them out of a 30-3 hole, except he put them there. He was the reason why they were down 30-3. Now you can say, but look at the comeback. He was brilliant in the second half. Yeah, he was. You know what would have been nice is if he was brilliant in the first half. You cannot just say he was brilliant and got them out of a hole when he's the one that dug them there in the first place. That's not outstanding play. That's mediocre play with outstanding moments. There's a difference. We cannot just, like, if we're going to do that, then anybody who plays brilliant football for 59 minutes, if we're going to say that they're disqualified, that we should just rename the Heisman to the most dramatic player. The most dramatic player. Because that's what this is. That's what Marcel Reed is. He is the most dramatic player. Because he decided to screw up so badly against a bad team and then be brilliant for a half. And he was brilliant. But if that's how we're going to judge this award, then this should be the most dramatic player, not the most outstanding player. Meanwhile, against similar competition, because no one that Texas A&M has played uh, has been all that great, save for Notre Dame. Save for Notre Dame. You look at what Julian Sayin has done. He has kept his team ahead the entire time. He has built up double-digit leads against everybody he's played. The only team that they didn't keep the double-digit lead on was Texas. And he has been the most accurate quarterback in college football. Like, what are we doing? Like, he's completed 79.4% of his passes. He's completing 9.4 yards per attempt. I get that the competition, especially the last 3 weeks, has been abysmal. But the first 8 weeks, it's actually been pretty decent. And he's got a great test this week. All right, let's talk about Jeremiah Love, right? Everybody's talking about Jeremiah Love, how he's surging. Okay, who has he played? If we're going to play the who has he played game, they played Syracuse. They stink. They played at Pitt. Okay, they're decent. They're okay, right? They just beat Georgia Tech. Yay. Played Navy. Boston College. Was brilliant against USC, right? Like that's probably his Heisman game. 24 carries, 228 yards and a touchdown. So like great performer. And 185 carries, 1,300 yards. Again, I would not be sad if he won the award. This is not me trying to tear down people. I'm just trying to say, if your narrative is that Julian Sayin's team is a juggernaut and they haven't played anybody, I got news for you. Like Jeremiah Love, outside of the first 2 games, hasn't played anybody except USC. Like, what are we doing? Diego Pavia has lost to the only 2 good teams he's played, Alabama and Texas. And then the other teams that he's played that they've said have been good are like fake good, right? Missouri, 17-10. Bo Prabula went down in that game. And LSU, who has now fired their coach. And they lost the only 2 good teams they played. Which, by the way, Julian Sayin beat that Texas team. Now, you can say, what you want about defense and everything like that, but wins have to matter, right? Especially at the quarterback position. Julian Sayin won those games. Diego Pavia didn't. And then, Jacob Rodriguez, I think he deserves an honorable mention. Texas Tech linebacker. He's been brilliant. But we're not gonna give an award to a linebacker in the Big 12. I'm sorry. Like Texas Tech has been really good. But again, who have they played? And yet people are pumping him up. And then last but not least, Ty Simpson, he has played a bear of a schedule. He's about the only one I can say that about out of this whole Heisman lineup. But man, you want to talk about playing bad teams? He went 23 of 43, 254 yards, 2 touchdowns, sacked 3 times against a 5-6 team at Florida State. Like, really? Are we can go there? Struggled against South Carolina when they almost lost. Lost to OU. Like they're 9-2. Are we really going to put Ty Simpson over Julian Sayin at this point? My point is this. If you want to go after Julian Sayin's schedule, go for it. But you better be consistent. Because if you're not consistent, like if you don't do your homework, you will realize that everybody in the Heisman race has a schedule problem. Everybody does. And you can say all you want about how the SEC is better than the Big Ten. I don't think it's that the margin is that big. And most of these teams outside of Alabama that we're talking about Heisman candidates for, they haven't actually played that tough a schedule. Like Texas A&M has played most of the bottom feeders in the SEC. Like, and then Alabama, you got no excuse. You lost to Florida State, man. Like they stink. So that's my I think overwhelming argument against the whole schedule thing. Now, I want to get to another thing that Zach Barnett ignorantly said, which is who's the best player on Ohio State's team? Who's the best player on Ohio State's team? As if that is what should, as if that's the silver bullet that would tell you that Julian Sayin, of course, should not win the Heisman. And my rebuttal to that would be, have you talked to NFL scouts? I believe it was Dane Brugler, who is one of the best out there, said that in next year's draft, he would not be surprised to see Jeremiah Smith and Julian Sayin go 1 and 2 in either order. So NFL scouts are saying he might be the best player on that team. And I think there's a good argument for it. Now, here's the problem with Ohio State. And their roster is awesome. And I think that does limit his ability to win the award. I don't think it's as overstated as some of these people are making it out to be. But like, you do have to share votes with guys like Caleb Downs, like Arvell Reese, like Jeremiah Smith, like Carnell Tate. And so when you do have that much talent, there is a question of who is your best player. But if you've watched Julian Sayin play this year, save for Purdue or for Rutgers, he has been phenomenal. He's done everything that's been asked of him. He has grown and the offense has evolved. And I think here's the tipping point is that he is insanely accurate, and he has been accurate down the field, in the intermediate part of the field. He has made great decisions. And again, I think his greatest asset, he does not put his team in danger. He does not make bad choices. And because of that, his team is always getting up 2-3 scores, and then the game is over. Now you can penalize him for the margin of margin of error being so much bigger than most other teams in college football. And I'm not going to necessarily knock you for it. But what I'm going to say is don't knock him and then go ahead and elevate somebody because they sucked for a half and then they brought their team back. Like, that's on them. That's their fault. It's not Julian Sayin's fault that his team is awesome. But like, Julian Sayin could screw his team over even with his team being awesome, which I guarantee you every Ohio State fan is probably a little concerned about after what happened last year with Will Howard. Will Howard, Buckeye legend forever because of what he did in the playoff run, but threw a pick in the first few series, obviously got concussed, played awful the rest of that game. He kept putting his offense and defense in bad situations. Julian Sayin doesn't do that. Now, where do we go from here? Why this video? Well, first, I wanted to produce this video because I would hate for people to think that Julian Sayin should be disqualified from the Heisman race right now because of his advantages. Yes, he has advantages. He has privileges. He still has to take advantage of them, and he has with flying colors. With flying colors. But now here comes the test, because you know what he's going to get? He's going to get a top 15 Michigan team on the road. And if they pass that test, they get the number 2 team in the country. They get another Heisman contender in Fernando Mendoza. And if Julian Sayin can beat both of those defenses, which both defenses are very good, Michigan's defense is very good. Indiana's is elite. We saw what they did to Dante Moore, and that was with almost a full complement of receivers. We saw what they did to them. And it's going to be in Indiana, which, granted, Columbus isn't that far from Indy, but it's going to be essentially a home game for the Hoosiers. If Julian Sayin throws for 3 touchdowns apiece in each of those games and they win convincingly, then I don't care what argument you have for their team is too good or whatnot. He absolutely should be the front runner for the Heisman at that point. That's my point. And I hate that this narrative has crept in because this narrative, it's not just with him, it's this whole team where it's like, well, they're the least tested number 1 team in the history of college football. I'm like, Dan Orlovsky, brother, there's been a lot of number 1 teams who haven't played anybody until the end of the season. Like, stop with the hyperbole. Okay? There's NFL talent on a number of these teams that they've played. Going to Washington's not a picnic. We're finding out that going to Camp Randall's not a picnic as Fickle continues to turn that program around. We're finding out that Penn State has always had the talent and that Terry Smith is getting that team around. And by the way, what Ohio State did to Penn State, nobody else has done. Oregon didn't. Indiana didn't. But Ohio State made them look like a JV squad, particularly in the second half. Now, I'm not predicting that they're going to beat Michigan. I'm not predicting that they would beat Indiana in the Big Ten championship game. I'm just saying, if Julian Sayin plays well and they win those games and they are the number 1 seed in the CFP, Julian Sayin should be your Heisman winner. And I don't think it should be that shocking. I don't think it should be controversial. I think it should be obvious because he is arguably the best player on the best team and having an outstanding season, which is what the award is, the most outstanding player. This has been the Big Ten Huddle. Zach Guggenheim signing off.